I'm Roniel,
I'm DaRon.
and today I would love to talk about something that really bothers me in our industry, and that's quality assurance. And quality assurance done in our industry is a little bit different. I know, than in any other like IT. Of course, it's still IT here, but it's a little bit different the way they do things in our industry in the security sector. So, I wanted to talk about a little bit of the problems and the issues you see or we see in like particularly, and then how we can improve them as well. So I'll let you go, Duran, if you want, or you want me to go.
The awkward silence. I I think you'd think after it's been what 2 or 3 years, whatever.
Oh my! Are you saying 2 years since we've been doing the Ryan and
Yeah,
DaRon podcast show?
yeah.
Hey, it's good. We haven't even had an anniversary celebration
No.
pause, but I'm just saying that we hadn't had one, which we should because it didn't feel like it's been that long.
Yes.
It doesn't
Yes.
feel like it's been that long. So it's awesome that we're going strong, and hopefully we could get more people will join the Ryan and DaRon podcast show subscriptions and get some of this knowledge. We have a lot of knowledge to give, and I think people are missing out on all of the blessings here.
Something anyway. Knowledge might be a little strong.
Very strong.
So I, I think I guess let me set it up and describe some of the differences that really you're hinting at before we get into any real discussion. When we talk QA, typically within penetration testing and compliance and things of that nature, where you are hopefully a third party, you're going out doing an engagement, and then you come back, you write reports, all that other stuff. When most of the time when people talk quality assurance, and I would actually say this is wrong, but most of the time when people talk quality assurance, they're strictly looking at ensuring that the report is of a certain caliber or quality. And the reason why I say that would be wrong, although that is the way the industry operates, is most of the damage that can be done, and we've talked a little bit about it before, is done before you get to the report writing.
First of all, we can go into how they should do things, but the biggest thing is that I see is, say, for instance, if you are a junior. We're going to go from junior to senior, but we're going to say if you're a junior and you get somebody who's supposed to be a SME, somebody who's a subject matter expert, supposedly in their field, and they're supposed to be the ones QAing this in the first place, right? And that person undermines or belittles the person that did wrote the report. Now, if they're a junior, you want to give some tender loving care there. You know what I'm saying? And you may not think they are a SME or they may not be the expert as you may think, but that it's not your job to belittle them. And sometimes that can come across and belittle that person to the point where they fear to even write a report or fear to even do anything, that they're going to always be questioned or belittled because they don't believe that they belong in the field, from having someone who's supposed to be a mentor or a SME in the field look down upon them. And that's the same thing that can happen to a senior. You could be a senior level person, and somebody who's above you thinks that they are the expert. So they can tell you or talk to you about or talk down on you about anything and make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about. And then when you prove them wrong, then they're sitting there looking stupid with the resting stupid face.
Yeah.
And it's like you didn't even need to do that in the first place. You're not the one to test the system. You don't know what went into what I described. You don't know anything about the system or the application or whatever I'm testing.
Right.
So instead of you asking more questions about it to understand why came to that conclusion, you decide to belittle me, to make me feel like I am not an expert because I am not at a certain title that you hold. And then when I prove you wrong, oh, you're right. No, no, that's not good enough. Because if you're doing this to me or somebody, or say if I'm the senior, if you're doing that to me or somebody below, then that makes people feel like they don't belong. And we had a conversation before in our previous episodes about people making people feel like they don't belong in their field. And that's not good. That's not what you think of somebody above you who's supposed to be a representation of what you want to be. And that's not what you want to hear from somebody. That's not what you expect from them. And that's what I say, the expectation for people who are above that level, they don't really have any expectations. They just think once you got there that you're the expert. Just like having a black belt. You think once you got to a black belt,
Right.
you are the expert. And that's just the beginning of your journey. That doesn't make you the expert.
Right. And when we talked about this related subject previously, we brought up the point that even if you're an expert in this thing or that thing, you're not necessarily an expert in the system that was tested. And that's even if you had tested it a year ago, because things hypothetically and hopefully happen between now and then, such that what you knew from back then may no longer be accurate. I think there's, in many ways, a misconception that I know Internet of Things, I know web, I know applications in general, thick clients, servers, all that stuff, and I know them very well. Therefore, I can do quality assurance on this report and I can make various assumptions based on what I know and then tell you you're wrong, but that's not necessarily the case. That's why you're supposed to go into this asking questions, not saying, hey, this is wrong. And you're not supposed to be antagonistic and immediately say, when the person rebuffs you, well, I'm going to go to another subject matter expert, or I'm going to go to this other person just to prove you wrong and get their input. Well, the other person has as little information about the system as the original quality assurance individual. So, I mean, you both are coming into it with partial information, not having tested the system, and you could be wrong. Maybe the tester tried what you're telling them to try and it didn't work. Maybe it's because they didn't know how to make it work. Maybe they did. I don't know. You don't know. You have to actually probe and ask questions or try to point them in the right direction. And just like what we've discussed about when you provide solutions, when you provide remediations and things of that nature to a development team, you actually do it broad, and then you pivot based on what their responses are. It's as you've seen, well, let's do this approach, and they say, well, that doesn't work. Okay, well, have you tried this instead? But that doesn't work either for us. The same thing should be happening during QA of a penetration test report when you're looking, or security assessment, etc. When you're looking at that report and you're saying, well, there's not data that I want to see, that I expect to see, or you say this thing didn't work, let me probe it a little further because what I'm seeing is that you should have it. I mentioned I had an instance where I ran a test on one system, another individual ran a test on a like system. They were sister systems. They were sister systems. They shared a code base. I found a vulnerability in mine. When I looked at the report, I expected to see that same vulnerability in the other sister system, and it wasn't. So I looked at some of the data, and lo and behold, that sister system did in fact have the vulnerability, but it wasn't caught by the tester. Now I'm not doing QA, so I'm left in a little bit of a situation. The person who was doing QA was hyper fixated on something else that he didn't understand in linguistics, and the end result is rather than having a discussion about, hey, why do I see this in your part of the report and I see the same data in the other part of the report on the other system, but it's not showing that same vulnerability? That discussion never occurred because QA was fixated on something they should not have been. And so there is a balancing act to be had, but that goes to exactly what I just said. Ask questions. Why do I see it here and I not see it there? What did you try? What did you see? What didn't you see? Did you miss this? Obviously, you wouldn't put it that way, but I believe one of the most important parts of QA though should actually happen before you get to the report. And we'll zoom back to the report writing process here in a second. But I mentioned a lot of the damage that can be done and is done happens sooner. And in the example I was just discussing, that should have and could have happened sooner through tighter communication between the testers, but also a little better oversight from management as to how the engagement is going. I'll give you a good example. When I was with Booz Allen, we got a government contract. It was a nice big government contract with a new organization that they hadn't been doing the work with before. Booz Allen started assessing the systems across this organization to DoD standards, specifically to the DISA-STIGs. And there was blood all over the floor. This was a civilian agency. They aren't tied to the DoD, and that was inappropriate. NIST existed at the time. Special publications existed at the time. In fact, Booz Allen was writing them and should have known better. But this goes to the whole, this is what QA is really for. QA's job is to help make certain that you're using the appropriate standards, that you're using the proper technique and methodology. QA is also there to ensure that all of the testers are following this general set of standards and methodology. That doesn't mean that they all operate in the same way. As you know, this is an art far more than a science, but it does mean that they ensure coverage. And when that's not occurring, then you have big problems because you have an instance where two sister systems sharing the same code have differing reports when they shouldn't. If a customer, client, whatever you want to call them, notices that and takes umbrage with it, they may use it to attack the organization, the test, the methodology. They may also use it to attack the knowledge of the people involved, or to claim that the findings are invalid because they weren't found in the sister system, kind of deal. So I think one of the biggest things that QA really should be doing is ensuring, again, I have to be careful because some people will take this and they'll take it the wrong way. And they'll think, oh well, everyone should be doing step one, two, three, four, five. Very detailed procedural steps for engagements, and that's wildly inappropriate. It doesn't work. But what I am saying is, again, that coverage. Okay, well, did you test for this? How did you test for this? Did the other person test for this? Yes, they did. What did they find it? Yes, they found it. Okay, well, if they found it, then let's talk about maybe retesting to see if you missed something, kind of deal. You cannot do that after the fact, and that's one of the problems I see with a lot of QA going on today is it's so posthumous that they can't retest. They can't say, oh, well, it looks like from this report you maybe missed this vulnerability. The testers go through and say, well, oops, yeah, I didn't check there, or I didn't check that, or I didn't check in this way or that way, what have you. Well, you can't go back and retest because it's been too long. They've already shut down the system or closed off your access or what have you. That's an important component to all of this.
No, that's true. And I don't think people they misunderstand that. Like I said, in my opinion, I believe that a good QA person, is not only helping build up the 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 person that is doing this assessment so they can get better and know what to test for. Like, you won't know what to look for, what you miss, unless somebody actually tells you. And the good QA person is almost like a mentor as well.
Right,
But since we don't do pairing, we don't pair people together. You know, the best thing you could do is try in that QA to teach them something
right,
and not going through undermining by doing what we just said. The whole idea is trying to teach them how to find these things or look for things that they may have missed. And that's the way you create a good rapport and relationship with that person. And they'll enjoy QA.
Yes.
Like, I don't see a lot of people, there's not a lot of people that can tell me they enjoy QA, because it's almost like having a code review where you have a senior developer telling you how shitty your code is instead of helping you build yourself up to be as good as them.
Yeah.
That is not for us to judge people and tell them, oh, your report is shitty, or you do. If you see somebody that is struggling to write or struggling to you know articulate their finding, or struggling to find certain vulnerabilities or issues, then you should be uplifting them and helping them, not using your experience against them. And that's what I see in QA. It's not a healthy process. And people make it seem like, oh yeah, you want somebody. No, I want somebody that's going to take my hand and teach me these things that I don't know. That's how we get better. That's how we build up this generation that's coming up, to get better, not by scrutinizing them and making them feel like they're belittled, like they're peons. Like, that's not a good thing. And another thing, preferences. A lot of times I see with QA, it's about the other person's preference. I give no fucks about your preference. Give no craps about your preference. None. You do it one way, I do it another. DaRon, you do one thing a certain way you like to do, and I do it a way I like to do. Only because a lot of the times it was the way they forced me to do it anyway. But you know, you don't press your preference on how you do things on me. You let me be me. That's the point of penetration testing. The freedom to do it your way, not that person's way. Okay, and that's the thing. Everybody wants to force you. Hey, you need to do it the way I tell you to do it. No, I don't. Who made you God? Who
Yeah.
made you God of this of penetration testing or hacking or whatever the hell you want to call it? Security. Nobody did.
They had a seat at the
And
table.
right. No, here we go with this table thing. Everybody has this notion of a table. There's no fucking table. If it's the case, you are the table. You make your own way.
That's true.
Okay.
Yes.
And the only person you're trying to be good at, or set expectations for, is yourself. You're
Yeah.
chasing yourself. You're not chasing the next person. But I just don't think I learn anything from the QA process. Only thing I learn is how bad the other person is, and how much I hate it. I don't enjoy it at all. I look forward to learning something from everybody, but you don't learn anything. You just get badgered and badgered. Like, I don't think people know what a QA process is supposed to be. And I know it's hard getting qualified people, but the problem is the process. Forget just having qualified people. You do need them, but if you don't have qualified people, then what is your process? And what are you allowing them to do? People are only going to do what you allow them to do.
Yeah, that's accurate. Let me give a couple of examples of some of the things that I do, some of the feedback I've been given, some of the feedback I've given, and see if this is useful to anyone. Uh, to your point about style, everyone writes their own way. Writing is truly an art. If it weren't an art, we wouldn't have English language arts, and we wouldn't have poetry, most of which is junk. That's its own matter. But the way I write is going to be different than the way you write. There are some things you don't want to do in a formal report. And everybody knows in general what those things are. Obviously, contractions, slang, anything like that. Informal English, using things like you. That's not a great phrase to include. Things of that nature. And so definitely we can go through and we can say, okay, there are 100% rules that you have to adhere to, and then there's a gray zone. To give a good example, you highlight text with, I believe, the default yellow highlighter in Word. I do not see color I don't see color right, and I don't see color well. It doesn't work for me. In fact, the yellow is invisible on white. So if you've ever noticed, I don't use a yellow highlighter. I use what I think is some kind of green, like I think it's a light green. I don't know. It's a different highlighter in Word, and that works for me. It sticks out to me. It's 508 compliant, Section 508 compliant of the uh, and Rehabilitation Act. But I'm not running around saying, okay, well, because I like to use this off-brand highlighter color, everyone should use this off-brand highlighter color. That's that doesn't make sense unless someone goes through and complains and says, "Hey, I can't see this." What do I care? You highlight it the way you're going to highlight it. I'm going to highlight it the way I highlight it. And things like bolding, you'll see people use bold or italics. And the problem with that is some people read bold as screaming, just like if you did all caps. So bold isn't necessarily a good idea. And with some fonts, bold doesn't look good. It doesn't work well. The other thing is too much bold, just like too much italics or emphasis, and it desensitizes you to it, so it no longer sticks out. It can make it difficult to read everything around it. My point being that no matter what you pick as an option to draw people's attention, there are always drawbacks. So I'm not going to chastise you over your particular pick because your pick is what makes sense to you. No one's complaining about it. You're honestly using the standard highlighter. If anyone's going to say anything, they should be complaining about the standard highlighter, which has nothing to do with you, you know.
Right, right, right.
The other
No, I
thing,
agree.
the other thing is I try to be more involved. So as you remember, I was involved as early as I was, made aware of the project that you and I were on, for example, going through and saying, okay, well, this thing that is allegedly within scope cannot and should not be in scope. QA should be doing that. And I said this cannot and should not be in scope because in this particular case, it would be illegal. You can't perform that action. But I've done other instances where I said this cannot and should not be in scope because it's too large or it's too nebulous or you need to focus your efforts here, here, and here. And obviously you can't do that if you have these other things. The point being QA, when introduced early, is going through and providing input that's going to help direct the engagement as a whole. And then while you're on the engagement, I'm communicating with you and I'm available so you can ask questions. You sit there and you see something and you say, hey, I see this, this, and this. What do you think? Well, again, to what we were talking about, having QA involved earlier and having that relationship where it is very much like you said, akin to a mentorship, be it temporal or not, I'm involved early in the process and throughout the process so I can help guide you. I can be a sounding board. And if you do have problems in the engagement, hey, you can come to me and I can go through. And it's, when done right, it is absolutely invaluable. On the Booz Allen task, for example, I actually wound up becoming QA overseeing the entire task. Originally, I was just a tester, and then I became a lead, and then from that, I became a tester, lead, and QA all at the same time, where I would go out on some engagements while I still had to QA everyone else's stuff. And as part of that, I had to do a massive course correction and tell everyone, you will use this. We're going to adhere to NIST. Here are the processes, here are the procedures, here is what everyone will be held accountable to, here's how we do the report. I had to adjust the report format because the organization really didn't like the format that they were getting, and then I had to fix everyone's English because apparently getting technical people who can write is its own problem. But my point being, I was heavily involved in everything as QA when I was there. And that's actually the way it should be. I was heavily involved in your engagements when I was QAing your stuff. That's how it should be.
No, I agree. But see, the difference in the way that you do things is a lot different than other people. And that's why I say I feel like when you're doing a QA for me, I'm learning. Doesn't matter what level I'm learning. Now, again, I've told people you have been a mentor, not only a friend to me, but I learn from every instance. I never feel like you're undermining me. I never feel belittled. I never feel like a peon, even though this guy calls me a noob every day. But I never feel that I don't belong. I always feel like I belong here, and he's teaching me how to get better, how to recognize things, how to discover things that I never even paid attention to. And to me, that's I give him credit for where I'm at today. But you know, I think that's what QA should be. It should not be where you're questioning my ability. You should be asking thorough questions to figure out how did I come up and get to that point. And if you don't understand it, that doesn't mean you go and undermine me. You I can Let's have a talk. If you don't understand me through text, let's have a conversation. Let me walk you through what I was saying. Let me tell you what I'm doing here. That way you get a good understanding so that you don't, feel like, ah man, I don't know if this guy knows what he's talking about. Obviously, if I put it on there, I know something. And I
Right.
know that a lot of people put things on there that's not always right. But my track record has been that if I put it on there, if I already did my due diligence to make sure that I've asked questions, talked to different people to make sure that I'm not missing something here, and before it gets to QA, you can damn sure almost maybe 99% know that I've already asked all the questions and made sure that it was correct. So that has been my process as of, for a few years now that I ask questions. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I don't have an ego. I'm trying to get better constantly. And I think to me that makes a good QA. It's enjoyable. I'm not scared. Oh man, what is DaRon going to say to me today? Is he going to tell me I'm shitty, I'm stupid, I shouldn't have did this? No, it's like, hey, hey, did you see this? I see this. Maybe you should take a look at this. And it only makes me look better when you talk about. I heard somebody said the QA is supposed to make a author better. Well, I have been in this industry for a minute, and I haven't not one person that's done my QA has made me look good or better. But one person, okay? And that's what we were talking about. It's made me look awesome. And don't even take credit for it. But has made me look awesome like I know that what I'm talking about. And that's what I'm saying. Like if that's the case, then they're not doing that.
Yeah, that's true.
They're making you not want to do the assessment at all. By the time I'm done arguing, I don't care about the report. Get it out, do whatever you want to do. I'm done with it. I don't even care about the next report. That's not how this should be. That is burning out your employees.
Right.
Because not only do we have to battle with the client, we also have to battle internally with our own people.
Right. Yes. Which is why what you're supposed to do is ask questions. I actually had a gentleman a few months ago. I gave him some feedback and asked him some questions regarding a report that the both of us wrote together, and he came back afterward and he said to me, "Thank you so much. This all really helped, and I haven't gotten any guidance and feedback that has advanced me reading these reports from QA, from my peers, from the people above me, up until you did it, and I wish more people did that." And I think a lot of that goes to your point, which is, again, if I look at a report, so let's actually talk in a little more clear terms. I'll give an example. Internet of Things, incredibly frequently, if you're talking some kind of hardware device, you're going to find private keys on it. Usually unencrypted private keys. We had we've had a lot of instances of that. You'll find it in the software, you'll find it actually on the system. If if someone comes through and they go through and they have these private keys, on a report, and all they have is, hey, you have insecure private keys, blah 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 blah. Maybe they describe the key, maybe they talk a little bit about it. Maybe the key is using, I don't know, uh, let's say just for fun, RSA 1024, something like that. So something very weak, right? And I'm QAing that. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to read where they pulled it from. Now, if they don't have where they got the key from and they don't describe what the key is used for, I'm going to ask the question, hey, would you mind telling me where did you find this? Maybe how is it being used? Something of that nature. If you come back and the folder, for example, is a path that is, blah 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 slash test sign, then the next thing I'm going to say is, out of curiosity, did you figure out how this was being used? If the answer is no, then that's fine, whatever. Because if nothing else, we report it like we know it's used in a serious manner. And if the client comes back and says, "Oh, this is just, you know, our software testers or development and they think they're funny kind of deal. They left this in production," then obviously it's not great, but it's less significant. So I can have that discussion with the development team. I don't necessarily have to fight it out. And this is exactly to your point. Fight it out with you because I may be asking you things you simply don't know the answer to. How do you know how they use every single key, even if you decompile the code? You don't necessarily know.
Mm-mm, I don't. And and a lot of times, like I said, we don't have the time to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, I don't care how they particularly use it. I just know that it shouldn't be there. And
Right.
however they're using it is probably not secure in the first place. So I'm calling that out. Now, once they may give me more context and say, hey, this doesn't even get used anywhere.
Right.
We don't do anything with this. And then, then we can negotiate and figure that out. But,
Right.
at this particular time, to me, when people do a lot of it, to me, when you're asking all these crazy ass questions, like you can ask a question, but a lot of times, as you've seen, people will go into all these different theories. Well, what is it used for? And it's using this amount of bits, and I don't understand this, and I don't get. It's like you're trying to show off. You're trying to make me think that you are smart at what you do, and I don't care. You know, all of these questions and different analysis of what you're trying to say or notes, I don't care. Keep them to yourself. The questions I want to know, I want to get is, have I looked at this? Have you
Yes.
seen this? Oh, I seen this here, and it might not be what you think. So double check and make sure, and then let me know. Different things to get them to start to look into these things and make sure. And it also teaches me how to do that myself. So
Yes.
when I come back to a QA again, and you have to QA me, you're not okay. He learned from this. He checked. He did what he needed to do. He learned from it. Now we don't have this problem again. But you know, I don't get that. We don't get that from a QA. I don't know anybody that gets that. And if you really ask a lot of people who are going through QA, a lot of the times they're feeling the same way I feel. You don't get that from anybody. You have a lot of people that want to show you how good they are in their field when they're not. Okay. And I don't need you to prove to me how good you are because I don't give two shits. The only thing I care about is getting this report out and making sure everything is right to the client so they're happy, they can get it, and we can talk about it and we can fix the issue. Not for you to spend time a year and 2 hours or on, oh, this one particular thing. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
We don't have time for this. And I just I just think people see QA differently than the way we may see it, and they do it wrong, and it's not enjoyable. It's just as worse. If you ever been a developer, you know how I feel. You know how it feels to be a developer, especially not a senior developer, but a junior developer. And a senior developer is not helping you grow. They're just
Slamming
dogging
you
your
down.
code.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. They do the peer review, brutalize you, provide no actionable feedback, and do so in the cruelest manner possible. What drunk
yeah.
monkey wrote this code?
Yeah, like, and you're supposed to be helping them get to that level. You your job as a subject matter expert is to help people. You're the expert. You're supposed to help me, not belittle me. You, Deron, let's say this. You're mentoring me, right? You're mentoring me to be the best Ronyo I can be, right? Not the best you, but the best Ronyo I can be, right? So it is a great thing and it looks good on you if you help build me up to the point where I'm as good or better than you. But
Right,
I'm still trying to be the best Ronyo. But I'm saying at that level.
right.
You're at a certain level and I'm trying to get there. And the only way to get there is to learn from the best. So why would you want to deter me? Why would you want to belittle me if you want me to be at that level someday? Like that's not the goal here, right? The goal here is to build up this, a generation of cybersecurity professionals, and we're not doing that if it constantly one you're belittling people, but constantly you don't even know what you're talking about yourself. You're not even an expert. You don't. How can somebody be? How can you be the expert when you're not really the expert, and then you don't have somebody who's telling you that you're wrong or
It's
that
true.
you're not right? You remember when we were at this company, and I felt that before you came, that I had nobody to learn from, and that I could not excel. That there was no reason for me to be here. The only reason why I came here is to learn from other people. And that's the same way here. You can't be an expert if you don't have anybody else to learn from. You don't stop because you become the next level. You have to have somebody else to guide you.
Yeah, that's actually a real problem in our industry. A lot of people are thirsting for someone to learn from, and either those individuals who could teach you something think they're too good for that. And I think the YouTube stars, for example, and YouTube stardom has given people bigger head than they deserve in that regard, where then they look down on you. It's actually my my daughter was talking about someone on YouTube the other day, and she said, "Oh well, I just don't think that person's a good person." And I said, "Well, what makes you say that?" And she said, "That person seems like the kind of individual who, once they get fame, will suddenly become a jerk." And that's what we're talking about is once people believe they've achieved some position, some level, some fame, whatever it happens to be, it could be a title, it could be whatever it happens to be, that they're a jerk, at least in person. You see that with Hollywood actors all the time. A lot of them are
Yep.
jerks.
No, I agree. Definitely jerks. Like, and that's why when they finally hit rock bottom,
Mm-hmm.
they humble themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in, just because I'm good at something or I might be the best there may be in a subject or something doesn't mean that I know more than the next person. I don't want it to ever come because you burn that bridge. And when you
Right.
burn that bridge, you can't repair it. Hard to repair that bridge. And then eventually it could happen to you where you are now the person that, is at that, below someone else. Somebody has surpassed you. And then you would want the same notion of help, and I just think people forget that. Like, again, we've talked about this before. It's nothing wrong with asking questions. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. You know, that's how you get better. But if you never ask the question, you never acknowledge that you don't know something, then you'll never get better.
Yeah, that's accurate.
So all I'm saying is the way things are done, the QA is done in our industry sucks. It needs to get better. And we need to stop having this illusion of being delusional that things are good and that you want somebody to do this and want no, I want somebody that's going to help me get better, who's going to take me and teach me things that I might not know, I might have missed. But if you can't acknowledge that you fucked up,
Yeah.
you don't know everything, then you can't help me and you can't make me better. And if you don't even acknowledge you don't have the skill set and you were just thrown into the shit, then I don't understand how that makes you good. And then there's some people, I got to say this one thing before we end off. There are people that'll get on a topic and say, "Hey, I'm going to do this topic," but then you hear them say that they don't really know nothing about the topic,
Yes.
but they're going to discuss the topic, but they
Yes.
are supposed to be the experts in the topic. I'm lost. Let's do better, people. Let's do better. Okay? Let's do better. But this is our time. I'm Roniel.
I'm DaRon.
And if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more episodes like this one. Until the next time.
Have fun.